to Eye on Horror, the official podcast of iHorror.com. This is episode 58, otherwise known as season 4, episode 1, the season 4 premiere, if you will. Woo! Yeah, we're back. Heard you missed us. I'm your host, James J. Edwards, and with me for another season and probably for the rest of our lives is your other host, Jacob Davison. How you doing, Jacob?
Doing well and happy to bring in the first episode in the futuristic year of 2021.
2021. Is 2021 when Mad Max takes place?
No, that's Johnny Mnemonic.
Okay. 2022 is Soylent Green. So we're getting into some dystopia here.
Yeah, but I'll be bringing up Johnny Mnemonic again in a bit.
Okay, I don't want you to tip your hand too quickly. Also with us, yet again, still for the end of time, is your other host, John Correa. How you doing, John?
Doing well. C-Lab 2021 takes place in 21, so there's that.
There you go.
I'll just be quoting that all fucking year.
Yes.
Ah, damn it. Already swearing. We just started the new season and I'm already swearing.
I check the explicit language box every time I publish, so you're good. Also, to start us off this season, we have a guest that we're all pretty pumped about here. You probably heard Jacob talking about the movie Psycho Goreman, or PG. We have the writer-director, Steven Kostanski, with us. How you doing, Steven?
I'm good. Glad to be on the show. Thanks for having me, guys.
Oh, thanks for being here. We've been, Jacob in particular, but all of us have been looking forward to talking with you.
Oh, right on.
Let's start off with, it's been a while. How was your guys' holiday? Do anything absolutely cool?
My 2020 ended as spun on as it could. My thermostat exploded.
Yikes.
Yeah, like we were trying to turn on the heat and it exploded. Like in the literal sense.
Like, well, yeah. How bad? Like, did it just blow off the wall, or I mean, no one was hurt, right?
No. Nobody was hurt. There was no fire, but it just kind of sparked and smoked. So, you know, if there was just any form of symbolism to the end of last year, you know, that was it. Yeah, just that was my New Year's Eve.
Oh, that was New Year's Eve. Oh,
yeah.
Oh, yikes.
It's okay. I started keto again right after Christmas, and so I was having like the keto flu on my New Year's Eve. So let's just say it took us like 3 hours to watch an hour-and-a-half movie because I had to keep pausing to go to the bathroom. So that's how I spent my New Year's Eve for 2020.
I've been buried in award screeners, like I think I've complained about. I mean, it's a first world problem, but I am to the point now where I am pulling up the YouTube app on my Roku and watching car crash videos and hockey fights just because I want something other than movies like, you know, Pieces of a Woman and The Life Ahead, you know, these awards bait movies, which, you know, Pieces of a Woman was good. The Life Ahead, not so much. But anyway.
Yeah, like as I was saying before, I decided to start 2021 off right. So I watched Johnny Mnemonic, the 90s Keanu Reeves cyberpunk movie, which I'd never seen before, but a lot of people are mentioning it took place in 2021 and it was pretty crazy and, you know, sounded up my alley. And I actually really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun.
Doesn't it open with a title card that says The Internet 2021?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. And it's like flying through, like, looks like Reboot, like just like bad CG cubes.
Oh yeah, I love that bad 90s
There's
CG.
a lot of that.
I love that stuff. And among other highlights, it's got Dolph Lundgren as a cyborg Jesus freak assassin and a dolphin cyborg hacker, like a literal dolphin that is also a hacker. And
makes sense.
Yeah,
is there a guy with like a laser whip thing?
Yes,
that like cuts things really
easily.
There's
a Yakuza assassin
cool.
who uses a laser whip as his weapon of choice. And
is Henry Rollins in that?
He is, as a doctor.
Okay. I seem to remember. Also, I remember Dweezil Zappa in it, but I might be getting confused with Running Man.
No, he's
Dweezil's in it too. Okay.
And Ice-T as a leader of a rebel resistance.
Yeah.
And it's funny. Yeah, because the opening crawl talks about the dystopia of 2021, and here's where it gets weird because the main plot of the movie is it's about a pandemic on the loose in this cyberpunk dystopia and how they're in late stage capitalism and the corporations run everything, and it's like of all the dystopias, this one kind of got it right. I mean, granted, there's no cool virtual reality is mostly on PlayStation, but yeah, I mean, some stuff they got more or less correct.
Well, I have to ask, is the dolphin hacker evil? Is he a bad guy?
No, he's a good guy. He's
Then
with the Resistance.
I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Dolphins are evil, and anytime someone says that they're good, like I just call bullshit like that. So
Have you not watched Flipper? Dolphins are heroic creatures.
yeah, I don't watch propaganda that the dolphins created to make us think that they're good. Okay, like no, I don't believe that shit. Like no. Dolphins are evil. I know what they did to Hank, okay?
Oh,
What they did to Hank Hill.
Oh,
Never forget.
yeah, but no, that was a fun way to start New Year's Day, and also it's my favorite time of year, January Giallo. So I started going through the Vinegar Syndrome Forgotten Gialli set. Like I watched Police Are Blundering in the Dark last night.
Wait, say that title clearly, because it's my favorite Giallo title of all time since I saw you post about it. It's awesome.
That's a good one. Yes, the title of the movie is Police Are Blundering in the Dark, because it's about a series of model murders in Rome, and also the police have basically been failing at solving the case for almost 2 years. So the headline is Police Are Blundering in the Dark, and more models are being killed while mostly naked.
Like most Jallos, yeah.
There have been a couple of cool movies that my awards watching have brought me to, and I kind of want to share them. One is a movie called Alone. That there are 2 horror movies in 2020 called Alone. This one's directed by John Hyams, who did a couple of the Universal Soldier movies, and it starts off a lot like Unhinged, with just like this road rage encounter, but then it goes to darker places, if you can believe it, darker than Unhinged. And another one is a movie called, I'm going to say this wrong, Bacurau. I think it's Brazilian. It's about this town that basically it starts disappearing. They can't find it on maps or on GPS or any of that stuff. And it turns out there's a reason why they can't find it. And the locals there's something happening to the locals that I don't want to spoil it because it's a pretty crazy movie. It's Bacurau, Bacurau, I think. It's the name of the town. Anyway, Korea.
Well, it felt fitting on New Year's Eve, not leaving the house. So, of course, we had a movie marathon. It felt fitting to watch The World's End by Edgar Wright again, going into 2021. It just felt, felt good. And you know what? I have to say, I've always loved that movie, but I've always denied it being my favorite of the Cornetto and Blood trilogy. But I have to say now, after rewatching them in 4K, dude, The World's End is, I don't know, it feels a little blasphemous saying, but it is my favorite of the Cornetto and Blood trilogy now.
Wow.
I know. I'm going to be big takes here.
Mr. Takes.
But other than that, I got a few new Blu-rays. I got Synapse's Massacre at Central High, which is an beautiful set. I knew nothing about this film, but just solely based on the fact that they gave it the same treatment as The Living Dead at Manchester Morgue and Suspiria, I was like, okay, this film has to be, pretty special for them to give it this steelbook with the slip and new restoration and all that. And yeah, it's an interesting movie. It's a total. It's about these high school kids that are getting killed by this not that mysterious killer, but I don't want to spoil anything. But like it's like a slasher film, but there's no slashings. Everyone's either killed by like some form of gravity kill or an explosion. You can definitely see how the film went on to influence like Heathers and stuff like that. But the whole film is like Lord of the Flies, but in a Southern California high school. You don't see any adults until like the very end. So it's just focused on these kids. And it's like a total critique on fascism. It's It's very interesting. I had a lot of fun with it, but the restoration on it was incredible. That film looked so good. And it felt like it had no right to look that good, but it did. They really knocked it out of the park.
Is it a better restoration than The Legend of Boggy Creek?
Hey man, they did an excellent job with Legend of Boggy Creek.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
That movie has no right to look as good as it does. Same with, what is it? The Town That Dreaded Sundown that Scream did. That's another one. It's like, who made this look this good?
Yeah. These previously very dirty films suddenly look absolutely brilliant. Yeah. I also got Arrow's new 4K for Tremors, which as usual, they always knock it out of the park with their packaging with those special editions. But that was another transfer that looks phenomenal. Like, I never really gave the Tremors franchise a chance before. I think in previous episodes, I didn't shit on it, but like I definitely was like, I'm not a Tremors fan.
Oh, man. First Tremors is the best.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say, not even the first one?
Yeah, that movie's a classic.
Yes.
I gave it a genuine chance, and I ended up loving it. Yeah, I'm a Tremors fan for the first one at least. I'm gonna try to watch the sequels at some point.
I would stop there if you're a fan.
Yeah, good. You peaked with one.
It peaked with one, but there's so many. Like, why not? Just give it a shot. I already owned them.
Yeah, some are better than others.
Yeah, they're not all bad.
I'm a little too busy with my Rocky marathon right now. We just got through 6, so on to the Creed movies.
6 is great.
The 6th one is Rocky Balboa, right? That's like okay.
So there's 8 movies because if you count Creed and Creed 2.
Steven, what have you been watching? Share with us some what's going on with your viewing.
Speaking of you watching like awards caliber films, I ended 2020 watching Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare.
Nice.
Which was just as bad as I remember it being.
I watched that one recently too, and it's actually worse than I remembered it. Like, I remember having fun with it.
I think 5 is still my least favorite. 5, I think, is like borderline unwatchable. I watched that one the day before. Because for some reason I've decided like I should give the like lesser Nightmare sequels a chance and see what's up with them. And so yeah, I ended 2020 with Freddy's Dead. It was awful. And then I believe it was New Year's Day, I finally got around to watching Judgment Night, which I had never seen.
Oh, with Emilio Estevez and
yeah,
okay.
And holy shit, does that movie rule?
That movie totally rules.
It kicks so much ass. It's such a fun premise, and Dennis Leary is the bad guy. It is like a totally crazy and inspired choice. Yeah, it's a super fun movie. Like it reminded me a little bit of this kind of forgotten, I think Empire produced it or acquired it in the 80s. This movie called Enemy Territory, where it's like you have kind of like snobby white people in kind of like the scummy part of town, and like them getting into a lot of shit and dealing with gangs and stuff, and just kind of like a survival story, like in the streets trying to like fight their way to safety. It's super fun. Highly recommend it. And then I followed that up with the remake of Nightmare on Elm Street, which I had never sat through in its entirety, but my morbid curiosity got the better of me. And I was like, I kind of feel like I need a bit of that like late 2000s grunge look, that like polished music video Saw movie grunge. So I figured I'd give it a shot. And yeah, it was awful. To no one's surprise, I'm sure. Borderline unwatchable.
Is it worse than part 5, in your opinion?
I would rather watch any of the Englund movies because, yeah, Jackie Earle Haley is a good actor, but like I don't know, I just think his Freddy sucks. It's boring. It's like dead serious.
Freddy is so ingrained in popular culture now that it's hard to imagine it being anyone but Robert Englund at this point.
Yeah, well, those movies are so much just Robert Englund's movies, more so than Halloween or Friday the 13th. Like those franchises swap out the actor playing the killer like pretty regularly, whereas Nightmare on Elm Street, it's all about Robert Englund. So to like take that element away, it immediately like cripples your movie. And it doesn't help that the movie itself is like super uninspired. Like there's nothing memorable in any of the dream sequences. Like I don't know. It's just like the most polished, bland movie I've seen in a while. I forgot most of it as soon as it was done.
Yeah. My big problem with the Nightmare remake is at one point they go into it, they're like, it's like they're making Freddy sympathetic. They're like, oh, he was framed. He didn't do this.
That's very confusing.
And then all of a sudden they pull that rug out from under you. Go, no, he's guilty as fuck. And you're like, why even go down that road?
Yeah, it was a very confusing choice, and I think it was them attempting to have a plot. Because another thing you'll notice with that movie is that it's like the second shot of the movie is like Freddy showing up. Like it's immediately a dream sequence. Immediately Freddy shows up. Immediately bad shit's happening, and there's no preamble of like teens being teens and doing teen stuff, and like you don't get a sense of anybody's like life or this community. Like it feels so much like you feel the artifice of it so immediately because you're instantly thrown into like this super serious situation of teens dying. Yeah. And so I think by getting rid of basically act one, they've had to figure out something for the kids to do for the rest of the movie. So it was like, well, let's maybe pose this idea that maybe he's not, like maybe he was wrongfully accused. And then it's like they're solving a bit of a mystery to fill up some of the runtime. And then the big twist is, oh no, he actually is evil, and it amounts to nothing. But I really think it was just we need more scenes of them like searching the internet and talking to people and asking questions just to like get to 90 minutes.
That was one of the things that actually had me looking forward to the remake, because I don't mind remakes as long as you do something different with it. Two of my favorite movies are remakes, The Fly and The Thing. You just got to make it your own. And I really dug the idea of taking Jackie Earle Haley and like making him a very serious, no fucking around Freddy. And by doing that plot of, oh, he was framed, he was innocent, and they murdered him, so he's a vengeance demon. I was really stoked about that. But boy, yeah, they bungled the shit out of it. And you're right, none of the nightmares. You have all this like advances in technology. You could have done some really cool and gnarly stuff with it, and they were so boring. And yeah.
Well, and like taking practical gags from the first movie and like pasting a layer of CG over it, like the Freddy like pushing through the wall gag. Yeah, it almost feels like they added that after because they're like, oh right, that gag that everybody likes that we didn't do, because it feels rushed. It accomplishes nothing and it looks super bad. It's like, why didn't you just make a rubber wall like in the first movie? Yeah. So yeah, just a lot of like misguided choices. It just really feels like that feeling when you're watching a movie that's clearly just a product. Like that's what it feels like. It feels like we got this name. We know when if this comes out, it'll make at a bare minimum this much money. Yep. And so whatever, like just fill that 90 minutes with stuff and we'll make our profit and let's move on. Like it just feels so by the numbers that, yeah, it's like there's really no reason to give it a rewatch, I'm going to say. So I took that bullet for all you guys. You don't need to go back to that movie.
Thank you.
Confirm that now.
Yeah. Before we move on to the interview section, I want to jump back to Judgment Night because you can't talk about Judgment Night without mentioning that incredible soundtrack.
That's a great soundtrack.
What they did is, and I remember, I mean, I'm old enough to remember when Judgment Night came out in theaters. They basically teamed up rap artists with heavy metal and hard rock artists. So you have like House of Pain and Helmet, doing a song, or you've got Run DMC and Living Color, and I think Slayer and Ice-T. I mean, and the whole thing, it just reeks of that post-grunge 90s, drop D tuned, heavy aesthetic, but then you've got the rap over it. So, I mean, it kind of invented nu metal before nu metal was a thing. I mean, so we can blame Judgment Night for Limp Bizkit, I guess.
Well, you take the good with the bad because you got a good movie out of it, but you also got new metal.
We should thank Judgment Night for bringing us Limp Bizkit, is what you should be saying.
Fair. Okay. Point
And
taken.
the Mission Impossible 2 theme.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
And byproduct, we have to thank Judgment Night for creating new metal, because new metal and Limp Bizkit inspired Triple X. And
Okay.
without Triple X, we wouldn't have Triple X3, The Return of Xander Cage. So,
Which is a great movie. Well, and also we wouldn't have the soundtrack to Freddy versus Jason. Not to constantly steer back to Freddy, but man, that is a great 2003 soundtrack.
Yeah.
If you want a perfect timestamp of 2003 on the dot, it's that movie's soundtrack.
that and Resident Evil, the original Resident Evil soundtrack.
Oh, the one where isn't it like Marilyn Manson and who, I don't remember the composer's name, but yeah, you like teamed up with the composer and did a bunch of tracks on it, and boy, is that 2002.
Oh yeah.
Good.
Let's jump into this. Let's start with the typical question. How did you get started making movies, Steven?
I mean, that is a long story, but I guess the beginning of it is that, I mean, as a kid, obviously I loved movies. Some of my earliest memories are of walking through the video store, looking at covers, being fascinated by some VHS covers, being terrified of others. I have a very vivid memory. Here I go again, bringing up Freddy. Vivid memory of a standee for Wes Craven's New Nightmare of Freddy, but it's like in all the promotional material, he had like the mechanical glove, not the glove that he has in the movie. So he had like a robot hand, and being like terrified of that standee, but also kind of curious as to why he had a robot claw hand. So I found a lot of stuff in the video store, like really engaged my kid imagination. And then I feel like it all went south when my dad put one of our VCRs in the basement, which then gave me access to just watching whatever movies I wanted. Like whatever we had dubbed, because of course I had a dad who would rent movies and then dub copies of them, like on what was the shitty fast speed on VHS? Was it SP, the one where you could put like a few movies on one tape, but it looked like shit? Like
SLP.
Yeah. So we just had all these crudely labeled tapes with all these movies on them, like Robot Jocks and stuff that I would just endlessly watch in the basement. And it was my ability to kind of like obsess over movies. Whereas before it was like, as a kid, it's like kind of a family event. You're watching movies and that's all it was. But once I had the ability to like pause and rewind and like revisit moments, like that's when it really clicked. I was like, oh, like I want to start making stuff like this, because I'd always been very like artsy. My mom's an artist, my dad's more technical, and I feel like I kind of combined their influences into filmmaking. And so my dad loaned me his Super 8 camera when I was 12, I think, and I started doing really crude stop motion animations in the basement. And it was of an era where like you're shooting on film, so you have to like physically send away the reel once you're done shooting. You wait a month and it gets mailed back, and then you have to set up a projector to play this little movie that you've made. So I'd spend months animating these things and then get these reels back and discover that like the film was underexposed, and like it was basically be like months of time wasted. I'd just be looking at a black screen with nothing. So I just kept persisting at these animations until finally I figured out how to set the exposure on this camera, and I started seeing some results, some like actual animation coming through. And that was really the start of it, because then after that I transitioned into like making full scale stuff, because I like making little monsters out of clay, and I was like, well, I want to make big monsters too. And I guess another pivotal moment was my parents got me Army Darkness, like the VHS of Army Darkness that Anchor Bay put out that had all the bonus features at the end of the tape. And so I remember getting that for Christmas one year, and then watching it and watching the bonus features and seeing all the guys at K&B Effects making like the Bog Witch lady in Army of Darkness, and like them talking about all the like skeleton masks and the story of how they like made A, B, and C masks, like hero masks and then background masks, and then in shots in the movie they like mix them up, so there's like clearly background masks in the foreground. And as a kid, I just found this so fascinating. I was like, wow, this is like making movies, like the mystique had been pulled away, and it's like, oh, it's just like a bunch of goons like in heavy metal shirts, like hanging out in a shop, just like throwing clay around, and like just seeing that dynamic of like Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell, like there's just so much personality there that it really inspired me. And I was like, oh, like it's just a bunch of friends like having fun out in the desert with skeleton puppets. Like I want to do that. And so that really like pushed my brain over the edge, and I haven't stopped since. That was basically the start of it.
What was the first movie that you made? Was it with the Astron 6 guys, or was it on your
No,
own?
I had made so many movies before that. I'd done tons of animations. Like eventually I shifted to digital. And so in high school, I basically every year I'd make a stop motion animation. Like every year I would set a goal of like make a little 5-minute movie. So I made a bunch of animations, most of them not memorable. One of them was called Nightfall. That was kind of like a loose adaptation of I Am Legend, because I was obsessed with that book when I was like 15. And at the time I was like, oh, like I'd love to make a movie out of this. Like imagine how cool a movie of I Am Legend would be. You know, this is a decade before Will Smith showed us what that movie would be.
Yeah.
And so I made this little animation of this guy trapped in a house, and every night vampires come and attack the house. And we actually showed it at an assembly at my school. Like the whole school was in the gym watching this movie. And the movie I put in a very overt jump scare that if you're watching it at home or on your computer, it's not going to get you. But for some reason, it landed like gangbusters with the entire school in attendance. And it was one of those great scares where everybody freaked out, everybody screamed, and then it led into the like post freak out, like laughter, like kind of quiet discussion of like, oh my God, I can't believe that happened. And just sitting in the audience, like with like hundreds of kids, like watching this happen it's still like one of the highlights of my film career, because that's the reaction you want when you're making movies. Is you want to be able to like, you want to know that you have that control over the audience to like kind of slap them around a bit, but then also kind of like make them like it, if that makes sense. Like they're getting knocked around and they're on this roller coaster, but they're right into it. And just that feeling of like captivating my grade school audience like that was really, really satisfying as a kid. So, I mean, Nightfall was a notable early short film of mine.
Can we see these anywhere? Are they on YouTube or anything? Any of your early shorts?
No.
You don't want us to see them?
These are so early that I would be embarrassed to show anyone. I have to have a cutoff point somewhere. Like, I mean, I've been making stuff since I was 12 years old, and like, yeah.
But you sold that jump scare to us so hard. Now we want to see it.
I know. I sold you this. See, this is what I'm doing. Is I sold you the story of it, and now that you'll never see it, so you'll always have this image in your mind of this perfect jump scare. And I'm just going to leave you. I'm going to leave you with. Yeah, I'm going to leave you with that, and you'll carry that with you forever, never knowing how underwhelming it truly was. Because, like I said, it was just a perfect alignment of like the right crowd, captivated audience, like just the right sound system. Like you need all those elements to line up for a thing to work. And it was the first experience I had of all of that coalescing into like the payoff that a filmmaker wants to get when they're making a movie.
And now you have us thinking you're this genius, and we're never going to get to see this genius work.
What he's trying to say is he has put it online before, and like he got crapped on. No, I'm messing.
Oh, I definitely showed it to the Astron guys, and they shit all over it. So that's another reason why I don't want to put it out there, because yeah, you're right. It's already been ripped on, so I don't need any more of that.
Now, how did you get hooked up with the Astron 6 guys?
So how that happened was there was a local film festival in Winnipeg called the Winnipeg Short Film Massacre, which was co-run by Jeremy Gillespie, who's one of the Astron guys. And in Winnipeg, it was like the go-to thing to do on Halloween, because all local filmmakers would submit their horror short films that they made to this film festival. It was like an amateur film festival and Halloween themed, so they had to be horror shorts. And so everybody would submit their movies. They'd pick 10. You'd go to this screening where they'd screen all the movies, and then a panel of judges would pick the top 3 short films. And so I submitted my movie. Well, actually, no, I got to back up a little bit. It's a convoluted story. But I actually met Adam Brooks because he was a friend of a friend. Like, we had a mutual friend. His brother, Adam, was friends with. And so he'd kind of like circled around like kind of the friend groups that I hung around with, even though he's like 15 years older than me. But I had known him kind of in the community a little bit. And eventually we kind of realized we both like making movies. So Adam started helping me out on my projects. I started helping him out. He was the one that convinced me to start submitting my shorts to the Winnipeg Short Film Massacre. I made a short film called Carl that was like a stop motion horror short. So that was my first submission. And then, actually, no, back it up. I made a short film called Fantasy Beyond. And that was, I believe that was my first submission to the Winnipeg Short Film Massacre, which I won that year. And then I won every year after that for 3 years straight. And so through that festival, I met Matt and Connor, who were also submitting their Grey Point shorts. And so that was just kind of how all of us got into the same room with each other, because we'd be watching our movies, and like Adam would submit a movie, I'd submit a movie, Matt and Connor would submit a movie, Jeremy would be running the festival. And so that kind of got all of us in the same sphere, and we realized we all liked the same stuff. And so I believe it was the following year that we had all helped each other on our shorts. Me and Adam helped Matt and Connor on HIZ. I had made a short called Insane Aphenia that the guys had helped out on. And so Adam made a movie called Sebastian and Alan. And so we had all like decided, hey, wouldn't it be cool to have like an old VHS company type logo, like a Vestron logo before everything? And so just kind of on a whim, we put that logo before all our shorts. And so this film festival, like suddenly every second movie had this Astron 6 logo at the beginning. And it just took off from there, where we're like, this is super fun. It's like we've got like our own crappy little production company, like making these little movies. And we're all clearly on the same page about the kind of stuff we like making. And why not just help each other out? Like, because we clearly were skilled in different areas. And so, yeah, like Matt and Connor would act and stuff. Adam would act and stuff. I'd help do effects on everybody's movies. Jeremy would do music. And we'd all just kind of share skills and talents. And that's how Astron 6 started.
That's awesome.
Sorry, it's a very convoluted story, but yeah, it all just happened so naturally the way it progressed. Like, it was very clear, like at this festival watching each other's movies, that like we all share like a similar passion and just have talents in different areas. So it made sense to team up. And we're just such like a misfit group of guys that I still feel like we if we didn't share the love of like filmmaking and movies, like we probably would not share a friendship. Obviously it's grown into more than that, like since then, like we, have bonded pretty tightly like over the years. But at the time, like I just felt like we all came from such different places that it was an interesting way to like mix us up, which I guess is like true of any kind of filmmaking, like working on any set. Like you're getting such a variety of people getting mashed together. And so, yeah, we're just an interesting and eclectic mix of personalities that led to some interesting product.
The first Astron 6 that I was exposed to was Father's Day. And my impression from Father's Day watching it on the screen is it just looked like 5 guys having the time of their lives making a movie. Was it like that, or was it a little more stressful?
I mean, Father's Day was a stressful nightmare. And I feel like this is going to be a consistent story with every movie that I talk about, is that the actual like process of making movies is hell. and it definitely was on that movie. And I have to say up front that the brunt of it was taken by the rest of the team, especially Adam Brooks. Like, he really like carried the weight of that movie more than anyone else. Like, he was the one that had to deal with trauma, and I would not wish that on anyone. It was tough making it because we were all spread across the country at the time. So Matt and Connor were in BC, Jeremy and I are in Toronto, and Adam was left alone in Winnipeg to try and sort all this out. So we'd only shoot when we were all back together for like Christmas, pretty much. So we tried to cram as much shooting into then as possible. And then any subsequent trip that I made back, like, I would try to help out and shoot stuff or build gags and things. But it was one of those things where, like, we signed on to do this thing and it all seemed seemed pretty great at the time. But then we realized, like, oh, we got to make a movie in like a year. Like, there was like a hard deadline, and they gave us, well, initially they were going to give us $5,000 to make it. And then we talked them up. We managed to raise that number to $10,000, which for some reason at the time we're like, yeah, this seems feasible. Like 100% is not. So it was really just like the most guerrilla filmmaking imaginable, and just shooting it kind of piecemeal, like whenever we can squeeze stuff in, just to make it work. So yeah, it was a real chaotic mess of a production. But I do think you need some of that to get some personality in your movie, to get that passion on screen. I think the chaos sometimes translates into fun filmmaking. And I think a lot of Father's Day has that.
You don't see any of that turmoil on screen, at least to me. For me, Father's Day it seems like the kind of thing that as soon as you guys say cut, everyone starts cracking up, because of what you just shot.
I mean, there was moments like that for sure, but I think that was more us losing our minds and laughing out of insanity, like laughing just to like keep from like sticking a gun in our mouths, that kind of laughter. But yeah, I mean, that's a real testament to the rest of the guys, is that like they're able to perform, and like when they, especially like Adam, Matt, and Connor, like when they're together, that's my favorite dynamic, and I will try to put that in every movie I possibly can. Like having those three guys in one space riffing is the best thing ever. And Father's Day, I think, out of all of Astron's movies, does that the best. And so it's a real testament to their abilities as like actors and comedians to be able to like turn it on even in the worst situations and still be hilarious and charming and engaging. So yeah, it's really like those guys, their performances and their characters and the dynamic between them, I think, is what carries that movie.
Now, it's going to seem like we're skipping ahead here, but we have to talk about Psycho Goreman because that's why we're here.
Oh yeah.
So let's hop.
Oh yeah, that movie.
Yeah, yeah, the one that we're trying to get people to watch. How was because a couple of the Astron guys helped out with that, but it's not an Astron 6 production, correct?
No, it's its own weird thing. Okay. I mean, in the same way that The Void was its own weird thing. I mean, not everything is an Astron 6 production. I think like that brand, it's pretty apparent what that brand is at this point, and PG is very much a Steve Kostanski movie, like through and through. Like that was the offer that I was made from my very generous financiers that approached me after The Void. I was basically given the offer of like, we want you to make something in the line of like more in line with like Manborg, like where we just kind of let you have free reign and just make something crazy and see what you come up with. And so yeah, I mean, I wrote this treatment, like, I don't know, it was over like a week or something. Like I had this idea for a little while of like kind of pairing a monster with kids, and specifically the image of like having a big like lumbering monster man sitting at a drum set always seemed funny to me. And then the lore that I've now built around the creation of this movie and this idea is that I was watching Rawhead Rex and sitting there bored because that movie's boring as hell. And just thinking like, well, like I love this idea of like an ancient god monster that's resurrected, but it doesn't go anywhere with that idea, in my opinion. So I wanted to like see like what's the spin you can put on that concept. And I was also like thinking about E.T. and that kind of like kids adventure premise, and how like there's never really been a dark version of that, where it's like kids paired with an alien being, but what if that alien being was like the most horrible creature in the universe? And at no point does this being learn its lesson. It just stays evil start to finish. And so that was where like the whole idea came together. And from that point on, it just, I don't think I've ever had an idea like, or like a script come together as quickly as that one, because it was just like throwing everything that I liked into one movie. Because so much of it is built on like half-formed ideas of other things that I had, and just kind of like mixing it all in a pot together and seeing what happens. And it was easy once I had this through line of like, what if these kids befriend a monster, but like, what if the kids are also crazy? Like once I had that dynamic settled, it really just kind of fleshed itself out, and it came together pretty easily. And that's where the premise came from.
I was about to say, because you talk a lot about PG being the ultimate evil, but watching the movie, I felt like he was like the title of most evil. He was kind of going toe to toe with the little girl a lot, because she was very evil in a very like young child way.
Well, and that's a thing that I don't see in movies. There was another motivation to pursue this plot, was that I don't see like kids acting like real kids in movies enough. Like I've got like I don't have kids myself, but I've got friends with kids and like younger relatives and things, and nobody has really tried to capture the dynamic of how crazy kids are and psychotic. Like kids can be totally nuts in a very charming and lovable way, where it's like kids have like that age before the world starts to break you down, and you start to get like self-awareness, and you start to get like kind of anxiety of how you're perceived. Like that era of being a kid is something I wanted to see more of, where you're kind of like, you're the emperor of your own weird universe, you know, like where kids follow their own logic and their own rules, and there's no talking sense into them. Like they totally are in this fantasy world, and that's it. And so I wanted that parallel between PG, who is essentially the same thing. Like the point was to kind of draw parallels between like a Skeletor or a Darth Vader, or a Cobra Commander, like all these villainous characters that are entirely just built up on their own kind of pompousness and their own self-perception of how awesome they think they are. And then pairing that with a little kid who thinks the exact same way. And then having those characters go toe to toe and show that they're essentially like mentally they're the same thing. So yeah, that was kind of what I wanted to achieve with that, was like have like the most cosmic version of the ultimate evil and the smallest scale version. So the smallest scale, most innocent version of the ultimate evil, and kind of pair them, put them against each other and see what happens.
Yeah, and I think that was pretty well encapsulated with one of my favorite kind of parts of the plot with Crazy Ball.
Yes.
I thought that was a pretty interesting way of portraying that, and with the inclusion of monsters,
well, Crazy Ball was my way of visually representing what's going on in a kid's head. And it's very obviously an homage also to Calvin and Hobbes.
Yes.
Because Calvin and Hobbes is a comic strip I grew up on and love, and still think is like one of the best character dynamics ever represented. And so I want to like pay a little homage to that, because Calvin is a character to me very similar to Mimi, where he's like totally in his own little world. So Crazy Ball was my homage to that.
Well, you had a lot of really great homages. There was one phantasm scene when they're in the nightmare realm that was just absolutely hilarious. When he visits him in the nightmare, and it's was it an homage to that scene in Phantasm?
Well, because yes, it 100%, because the first time I watched Phantasm and that happened, my immediate question was, well, what happens after that? like there's And I think it speaks to a lot of like dream sequences in movies where it's like where it doesn't show them waking up. It's like, okay, so we pull back and we reveal the tall man standing there and zombies come out. And it's like, does he just like roll around on the bed going, like for another like 2 hours? Like what is after that? So I wanted to show like that there would be a conversation after the like jump scare. It's like, well, we have to fill up the time with something. So that was the inspiration, definitely the inspiration for that scene.
And the character designs in this film, all the different aliens, all the different, like, they're really good. What were some of your influences with that? Because like some of it, I was like, man, this feels like 90s Mark Hamill Guyver.
Oh yeah. Oh well. Me and Jacob have talked about this already. Yes, it's very much Power Rangers, very much like Kamen Rider, very much like I love the movie Mechanical Violator. Hokkaido is a good reference. That kind of like 90s like Japanese monster design. It's like practical monster design where it's like cool suits, but they also have to do cartwheels and high kicks like that. I feel like it's like designed that's specific to that. I really like. Yeah, it's very much influenced by a lot of Japanese movies and shows that I like. And Guyver is really like the ultimate homage, I think, because I'm really genuinely disappointed that we don't have more media like that right now. Like even watching, like they made those like, and I'm being very vague with these things I'm referencing, so I don't remember the titles offhand. But there's like those Kamen Rider, like they made like movies, like I believe it was the 90s. They're kind of like little one-off Kamen Rider movies that had some really wild creature stuff. Like they pumped a little bit more money into them, and it's just like an era of cinema and a type of cinema that I'm sad is not really a thing anymore. And it's like a hole. I feel like this hole in my media consumption that is not being satisfied by anything right now. Like I don't feel like there's any Netflix originals that like really deliver on that kind of like beat 'em up monster stuff that I grew up on as a kid. Like this movie is very much what kid Steve wanted to find at the video store. Like it's very much the like perfect encapsulation of the movie that I wanted to find and could never quite get to the heights of. Like, not to say that there's lots of awesome stuff that I love, but this one just kind of mashes all those things together into one thing.
If this was next to a copy of, Bleeders with the Blood Pack cover, which one would you have grabbed?
Well, see, I think PG would need to have like the Dead Pit cover with the light up eyes.
Yes. And glow in the dark.
Yeah, glow in the dark, and you press the like kind of raised cover and the eyes would light up and it would start screaming for some reason. Like, that always freaked me out as a kid. Is that, and then what was it, Metamorphosis? Yeah. I think was the other one that had the light up eyes. I have a very vivid memory as a kid of looking at that cover and being very bothered by it. A movie I've never seen, probably never will see, but I'll remember that cover.
Oh yeah, I was so happy when I found a copy on VHS of Bleeders with the blood pack still intact. It's like, oh yes, $3. I'm definitely buying this. Still have never watched it, but it's on a display. Yeah,
VHS was art.
Well, that is something of that era that I'm really sad is not around anymore. I feel like part of movies and consuming movies is that journey to the store and examining these covers and like having just that pre-movie experience of like imagining what you want this movie to be by looking at the cover. I really feel like that's missing now. You don't get that scrolling through Amazon Prime quite as much.
Yeah.
Not having that tactile quality of holding a thing in your hand and looking at it and just being wowed by whatever the painted cover was, whatever gimmick they had on display.
Well, that and also a lot of like cover art. The cover art for PG is great. You guys have been doing an awesome job of completely selling this movie. But just in general, like when you're scrolling through, because I do like trying to find like the hidden gems and stuff. But like the covers sometimes these days, it's just such bad photoshopping or just like lazily put together. It's just like, and I don't feel like I'll get suggested and immediately feel unmotivated to watch something.
The same girl crawling away from a guy's legs or
shit. That Photoshop job that has been used on like 10 covers of, it's like a girl with like her hands out and she's got long dark hair. I don't know what exec decided like, that'll sell this movie, but I'm sure sick of it.
And they do the same thing with X-Men movies. X-Men movies are plagued by terrible Photoshop posters, or it's just like,
I don't think they've ever had a good cover. Yeah, I don't get it. I think marketing is its own weird beast, unfortunately, that I, as a filmmaker, I have very little control over. Thankfully, our distributors have been really good about like being honest and upfront about like there has to be a certain look visually for a cover to sell it in like a Walmart. And so we have like alternate art that's specifically that's like the Photoshop job, that if we just had that, I would be pretty disappointed. But they were nice enough to spring for the Graham Humphreys like painted poster, that official art, which is fantastic and I love it. But we've also got like so many other posters, like we've got like so much art for this movie. It's not even out yet. And there's posters that we haven't even released yet. Like there's one that's a parody of the movie. I don't know if you remember the Sinbad movie House Guest from the 90s, but that movie has a very distinct poster. And so I commissioned a poster for PG that's an homage to that.
Nice.
That I don't know how it's going to be released in what format, but eventually it'll be out there, and it's pretty great. I like that this is the kind of movie that has there's like a broad spectrum of like types of covers you could do for this, because I do feel like this is the kind of movie that if it was released in the late 80s, early 90s, it could run the gamut of like painted cover, like the Humphreys cover, or it could even be just like still picture of PG like silhouetted with the title, like that kind of like super simplistic cover. Like it could go for like fun goofy kids fantasy, and it can go for like dark scary in its promotion. So I like that there's that kind of range, and I look forward to seeing what other people do with it, because that's half the fun of making movies now, is just seeing what kind of crazy art fans come up with. So I'm sure there'll be some good stuff.
Yeah, I'm surprised you guys didn't do a parody of like the Fred Savage movie, Little Monsters.
Oh, well, isn't that cover it's just the two of them?
Yeah.
Back to back.
I feel like we do have some promotional material that's kind of close to that. When you see the House Guest poster, you'll be satisfied, I think. It very much encapsulates like 90s kids adventure, like family adventure nonsense. That looks very lighthearted for what the content actually is. So yeah, we definitely have stuff going in that direction.
Which that's the movie to a T, because you'll have some like lightheartedness going on, and then it cuts to PG going, "I'm going to murder you. I'm going to make you suffer." And then the little kid just goes, "Okay, bye."
Yeah, like I love that kind of delusion in stories where, and really it's just a movie of a bunch of delusional people dealing with a delusional monster. It's like everybody's in their own little world, and nobody is stopping to go like, none of this makes sense, this is bad. Everybody is like living out the tropes of a 90s kids adventure movie and ignoring the consequences. And I think that's the charm of it, is like, let's ignore the fact that on the TV PG's blowing up half the world. Like, our family is whole again, and that's really what it's all about, family, right? So
I was going to say, I loved Adam Brooks's character as kind of the comically oafish sitcom dad.
Comically oafish until he have to do a flip off of a set of shelves, and then suddenly he's super capable. But
yeah.
Aside from that, I wrote that character with Adam in mind, because I knew he was the only person to pull it off, and boy did he deliver. It was just great having him on set and being like, how can we make this dumber? Like, I've set the groundwork. I find, like, especially with scripts, like, that's kind of my least favorite part of making films, because it's such a blueprint to me. It's not actually what you're going to get, because it's that moment on set when I'm standing there with Adam and we're going like, you like broke the microwave. How do you react to that? And then you're just filming long takes of him like starting to tear up while slowly zooming in on his face. And it's like, that's where that stupid magic happens. And Adam is, well, all the Astron guys are the best for that. It's like, you just got to get to set and you got to get a camera on them and let them go. And then everything you get is magic.
And I also wanted to ask, like, just how did you come up with all of PG's powers? Because, like, just he's got so many, and just he makes good use of them.
That was a case of I came up with the powers as the plot needed them to be. It was very much a like I would come up with a scenario, and then I would come up with like, what is the most left turn thing that he could do right now to totally throw people off, and then I would just go in that direction. Or like, what needs to happen to advance the plot, and then PG can magically do that, because that to me is a trope that I love, and I feel like I'm kind of making fun of it throughout the movie. The fix all MacGuffin, where it's like the gem is this thing that has powers that can control PG sometimes, but not really other times. Like it's only really like just a way to like push the plot forward. I made a very conscious decision when writing this to not get bogged down in that logic, and if anything, just draw attention to how stupid it is, because the movie would have been real boring if I built a mythology that made too much sense. Like half the movie wouldn't even happen, and so I just embraced the nonsense of it. And not to like spoil the end of the movie, but like how MacGuffins ultimately end up meaning nothing in every movie, like drawing attention to that as well. And so yeah, that applied to PG's powers, where it was just like taking a bunch of like leftover ideas of other stuff I had and being like, well, what should he do in this scenario? Like, what's his idea of giving a character an honorable death? And then running down a list of nonsense I've come up with and seeing which one would throw the audience the most and committing to that.
I definitely don't want to spoil the warrior's death that PG gives people, because that is a highlight. It is one of my favorite bits in something I've seen, in anything I've seen recently. And I just, the only thing I have to ask when it comes to the warrior's death bit, is that actually his culture's thing, or is that just something he himself came up with, being like, oh yeah, this is a true warrior's death, because everyone seems so against it.
Well, I think it is a case of like, in PG's mind it makes sense, but to nobody else it makes sense. In the same way that crazy ball makes sense to Mimi but makes no sense to anyone. Like his logic of what honor is entirely specific to PG and no one else. And the reason he gets away with it is because he's this ultimate being that can just totally dominate the universe. So it's, people don't accept it. They, nobody accepts what he does to them, but PG is totally okay with it, if that makes any sense.
Oh yeah. It was just one of those funny bits of just like the constant, like, in my culture, this is the way a warrior dies. And it's just like, after a while, you're like, I don't think so. We're meeting a lot of people from like his area, and like none of them are liking this. Yeah, I just thought that was hilarious.
That's a good point.
Let's wrap this up. Steven, what is next from you? You got anything on deck?
Well, as you guys can see behind me, I've got some stop motion figurines on the go. Because we're still in a pandemic, I've got some stuff that I'm working on at home, some animation I want to do, some like proof of concept type stuff, and some little animated shorts that I've been making. When quarantine hit, I started kind of bringing back my little stop motion setup that I used to have, and really got into that. So after making PG, and especially after I shot 4 episodes of the Day of the Dead TV series from August to beginning of December, I guess. Was such an exhausting experience shooting a series in a pandemic that I think I'm going to stick to my stop motion and writing for the next little while.
Psycho Goreman, the 22nd, right? January 22nd?
Yes. Yeah, that is whatever theatrical is. That's what it's going to be.
This episode will post on the 18th. So if you listen to this the first week, Friday is Psycho Goreman. So go see it. Steven, thank you very much for being here with us.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Where can everybody follow you? Do you have a Twitter? Do you got some kind of social media? Or anything?
I'm not on Twitter, but I actually have 2 Instagram accounts. Archduke Nightmare is one of them. That one is more dog centric. But if you want to go to my Kill Kostanski account, that account is primarily just my effects work. So I recommend everyone go to that one because I post stuff about my little stop motions that I'm doing and pictures of past effects and movies I've done. So yeah, that's the place if you need your Steve Kostanski fix, go to Kill Kostanski on Instagram.
Right on. Oh, cool. Our theme music is by Restless Spirit, so go check them out. Our artwork is by Chris Fisher, so go check him out. You can find any of us at the Eye on Horror Facebook page, the iHorror Facebook page, the Eye on Horror Twitter, the Eye on Horror Instagram, iHorror.com. Am I missing any, Korea?
iHorror the Flamethrower.
The flamethrower. We got
the
flame.
Kids love that one.
Merchandising.
And wait for next year when we make the laser. We got a laser in development. But we're stuck on concept on what color we want it to be. I wanted green. The people say that purple's stronger. I like the purple, but it's a whole thing.
So yeah, we're not hard to find. So if you want to at us for any reason, get at us. And we will see you in a couple of weeks. So for me, James J. Edwards.
I'm Jacob Davison.
I'm Jonathan Correa.
And I'm Steve Kostanski.
Keep your eye on horror.